I wasn't supposed to notice him. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head how easy it would have been to miss everything. If I had just sat down, put my headphones in, and stared out the window like I usually do, none of this would have happened. But instead I saw the note. It was already there when I took my seat. Small, folded, placed right in the middle like it was waiting for someone. For me. At first I ignored it. I had my own plans. Get on the train, ride 3 stops, get off, meet a friend, pretend my life wasn't quietly falling apart. Simple. Predictable. Safe. But that stupid piece of paper kept pulling my attention back. Every time I tried to look away, my eyes drifted down again, like something in me already knew it mattered. After a minute I gave in. I picked it up, unfolded it slowly, and read. If you're reading this, don't get off at your stop. I actually scoffed under my breath. Seriously? No name. No explanation. Just that. I turned it over blank. For a second, I thought it had to be some kind of joke. Maybe someone left it for a friend. Maybe I wasn't even supposed to find it. But then, why did it feel like I was? I glanced up, scanning the carriage. That's when I saw him. He was sitting a couple rows ahead, angled slightly toward the aisle. Around my age mid-20s maybe. Dark hair, a little messy, like he didn't care enough to fix it but still somehow made it work. He looked relaxed, almost too relaxed, like he didn't have anywhere he needed to be. Like he was exactly where he wanted to be. And he was looking at me. Not in a bold, obvious way. Just watching. Our eyes met for a second. Maybe less. He didn't smile. Didn't look away immediately either. Just held it long enough for something unspoken to pass between us. Then he turned back to the window like nothing happened. But it had. I looked back down at the note, my fingers tightening slightly around the paper. Okay. So maybe it wasn't random. Still, that didn't mean I was about to take instructions from some stranger on a train. I had plans. I had somewhere to be. I folded the note again and slipped it into my pocket. Decision made. Ignore it. Except. I couldn't. The next 15 minutes felt way longer than they should have. I kept checking my phone, opening apps without actually looking at anything. The announcement system crackled overhead, calling out the next stops, but it all blurred together. Every few seconds, I caught myself glancing up. And every time, he was still there. Sometimes looking out the window. Sometimes looking at me. Not constantly. Not in a creepy way. Just enough to make it impossible to forget he was there. Waiting. For what I didn't know. Finally, I exhaled sharply and stood up. It wasn't dramatic. No big internal speech. Just a quiet, almost annoyed decision. If this guy was behind the note, I was getting answers. I walked down the aisle, stopping next to his seat. Up close, he looked even better. Not in an over-the-top way, just real. Confident without trying too hard. The kind of presence you feel before you fully process it. He glanced up at me like he'd been expecting this the whole time. Did you leave this? I asked, pulling the note from my pocket. He looked at it, then back at me. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Yeah, he said simply. No hesitation. No pretending. I blinked. Okay, why? He leaned back slightly, studying me in a way that should have felt uncomfortable, but didn't. Because, he said, you looked like someone who needed a reason to change his plans. That caught me off guard. I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. You don't even know me. No, he admitted. But I don't need to. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds a little arrogant. Maybe, he said, still calm. Or maybe I'm just good at reading people. There was a pause. And in that pause, I didn't walk away. That was the problem. My name's Mitchell, I said finally, not even sure why I was still standing there. Frank, he replied. We shook hands. Quick. Casual. But I noticed the way his grip lingered just a fraction longer than necessary. Like he wasn't in a rush to let go. So, Frank said, nodding toward the empty seat next to him. Are you getting off at your stop? I hesitated. The next station announcement echoed through the train. That was mine. I should have moved. Grabbed my bag. Ended this weird interaction before it became something else. Instead, I just stood there. Frank tilted his head slightly, watching me, not pushing, not rushing. Just waiting. Or, he added quietly, you could stay. Just this once. My chest tightened. It was such a small decision. Stay on a train a little longer. Miss one stop. Change nothing, or maybe everything. I glanced toward the doors as the train began to slow. Then back at him. And for some reason, I already knew. I wasn't getting off. The doors slid open. That soft mechanical sound echoed louder than it should have, like the whole train was holding its breath with me. This is your stop, Frank said quietly. Not pushing. Just stating it. I nodded. Yeah. But I didn't move. People around us stood up, grabbing bags, stepping into the aisle. Someone brushed past my shoulder, muttering a quick, sorry, but I barely registered it. My focus stayed locked somewhere between the open doors and him. Frank didn't look away. He just watched me like he already knew what I was going to do. And that annoyed me. You always this confident with strangers? I asked, buying myself time. A slight smile tugged at his lips. Only when I'm right about them. I huffed out a breath, glancing toward the platform again. I could still make it. 2 steps, maybe 3, and I'd be out. Back to the version of the day I had planned. Predictable. Safe. But something about that suddenly felt wrong. Like I'd regret it. The warning beep sounded. Doors about to close. My chest tightened. And before I could overthink it, I stepped back. Away from the door. The train doors slid shut right in front of me. And just like that, I'd missed my stop. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then Frank leaned back slightly, exhaling like he just watched a movie end exactly the way he expected. Good, he said. I turned to him, raising an eyebrow. That's it? No dramatic speech? No explanation why I just messed up my plans? He chuckled under his breath. You didn't mess them up, he said. You changed them. Same thing. Not even close. I stared at him for a second, trying to figure out if he was always like this or if I'd just walked into something weirdly specific. All right, I said finally, crossing my arms slightly. You got what you wanted. I stayed. Now what? He tilted his head, considering me. Now you sit down. I hesitated. Again. Which was starting to become a pattern I didn't like. Still, I sat. The seat next to him felt warmer than it should have, like someone had been there recently. Maybe him earlier. Maybe I was overthinking it. Probably that. Up close like this, I noticed more details. His hands relaxed, resting loosely on his thighs. A faint scar near his knuckle. His jaw sharp, but not in a harsh way. And his eyes steady. Focused. Like he wasn't easily distracted. Like right now, I had his full attention. So, I said, trying to keep things normal. You do this often? Leave mysterious notes for random guys on trains? Not often, he replied. But you do it. He smirked slightly. Only when it feels right. I shook my head, letting out a quiet laugh. That's vague as hell. Yeah, he admitted. But it worked. I glanced down at my hands, then back at him. Still doesn't explain why me. There was a pause. This time, his expression shifted just a little. Less playful. More real. I saw you on the platform, he said. Before we got on. I frowned slightly. And? You looked like you were about to do something you didn't actually want to do. That hit again. Twice now. Too accurate for a stranger. I looked away, out the window, watching the city blur past. You don't know anything about that, I muttered. You're right, he said calmly. I don't. Another pause. But I know that look. I turned back to him. And what look is that? He held my gaze, not even blinking. The one where you're going through the motions because it's easier than asking yourself what you actually want. My throat tightened slightly. I didn't answer right away. Didn't want to. Because the annoying part was, he wasn't completely wrong. And I hated that. You're making a lot of assumptions, I said instead. Yeah, he said. But you still didn't get off. I exhaled slowly, leaning back into the seat. Maybe I was just curious. Maybe, he agreed. But that's still a reason. We sat in silence for a moment. Not awkward. Just heavy. The train rocked gently beneath us, steady and constant, like it didn't care about whatever weird turning point I'd just stepped into. So what now? I asked after a second. I just ride this train forever because some guy told me to. Frank smiled again, softer this time. No, he said. Just don't rush to get off. I let out a quiet breath through my nose. That's your big advice? For now. I glanced at him sideways. You always talk like this? Only when people actually listen. I smirked despite myself. Don't get used to it. He chuckled. Too easily. And for some reason, I didn't mind. Not yet. But something told me. This wasn't just about a missed stop anymore. We rode in silence for a while after that. Not the awkward kind where you feel like you should say something. More like, both of us were letting the moment stretch, seeing how far it could go without breaking. I kept telling myself this was temporary. That I'd get off at the next stop, maybe the one after that, laugh it off later like some weird story. Yeah, this random guy convinced me to miss my stop. End of story. Except, I didn't move. The train slowed again. Another station. People stood up, shuffled toward the doors. A couple squeezed past us, the guy bumping lightly into my shoulder as he went. Sorry, he muttered. It's fine, I said automatically, but my attention wasn't on him. It was on the doors. Again. Frank didn't say anything this time. Didn't remind me. Didn't look at me. He just sat there, like whatever I did next had nothing to do with him anymore. Which somehow made it worse. You're not gonna say it again? I asked, glancing at him. He turned his head slightly. Say what? That I shouldn't get off. He shrugged. You already know that part. I frowned. That's not the point. Then what is? I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because I didn't actually know. And he saw that. Of course he did. The doors opened. Another chance. Another out. My chest tightened again, but this time it felt different. Less like pressure, more like something pulling me in the opposite direction. Like leaving now would actually feel wrong. I stayed. Again. The doors closed. The train moved. And just like that, it wasn't just one missed stop anymore. Okay, I said, exhaling slowly. This is getting ridiculous. Frank smiled faintly, like he'd been waiting for that. Yeah? I had somewhere to be. And now you don't. That's not how that works. Isn't it? I turned toward him fully this time, narrowing my eyes slightly. You're way too calm about this. He leaned back, one arm resting along the back of the seat behind me. I'm not the one spiraling over a small decision. I'm not spiraling. You missed 2 stops, Mitchell. Okay, maybe a little. He laughed quietly at that, and it hit me how easy it was for him. Too easy. How are you so relaxed about everything? I asked. He glanced at me, then out the window. Because I don't pretend things matter when they don't. And this doesn't matter? He looked back at me. This? He said. This matters. There it was again. That shift. Subtle, but real. My stomach tightened slightly. Why? I asked, quieter now. He held my gaze for a second, like he was deciding how honest to be. Then. Because you stayed. That shouldn't have meant anything. And yet, it did. Way more than it should have. I looked away first this time, running a hand through my hair. This is insane, I muttered. Probably, he agreed. But you're still here. I huffed out a breath, leaning forward, elbows on my knees. Yeah, I am. Another pause settled between us. But now it felt different. Closer. He shifted slightly beside me, just enough that our shoulders almost brushed. Almost. You know, he said after a second, most people wouldn't have even picked up the note. I glanced at him. Yeah? Yeah. They'd ignore it. Stick to their routine. Get off exactly where they planned to. I smirked faintly. Sounds responsible. Sounds boring. I shook my head, but I couldn't help the small smile creeping in. And what? You're just out here testing people? Not people, he said. Just the ones who catch my attention. That made my chest tighten again. In a way I wasn't used to. And I caught your attention? I asked. His eyes didn't leave mine. Yeah, he said simply. No hesitation. No joke. Just truth. For a second, either of us moved. Didn't look away. Didn't say anything. And then, the train jolted slightly, shifting tracks, the sudden movement breaking whatever that moment was. I leaned back again, clearing my throat. So, I said, trying to regain some control, where exactly am I even going now? Frank smiled, just a little. That depends. On what? He tilted his head, studying me again. On whether you're actually done following your old plans, or if you're just delaying them. I let that sit for a second. Because honestly, I didn't know the answer. Not yet. And for the first time in a long time. That didn't scare me as much as it should have. I didn't realize how far we'd gone until I checked the map above the door. 3 stops past mine. That's when it actually hit me. Okay, yeah, no, this is officially not normal, I said, leaning back and staring at the ceiling for a second. Frank glanced at me, amused. Took you long enough. I let out a breath, dragging a hand down my face. I'm serious. I was supposed to meet someone. Were you? He asked. I turned my head toward him. What does that mean? He shrugged slightly, like it wasn't a big deal. Just didn't sound like you wanted to. I frowned. You don't know that. Then call them, he said simply. That stopped me. I blinked. What? Call them, he repeated, nodding toward my pocket. Tell them you're late. Or not coming. Whatever the truth is. I stared at him for a second. Because that was way too direct. And the worst part? I knew exactly who he was talking about. I pulled my phone out slowly, my thumb hovering over the screen. The contact was right there. 1 tap. That's all it would take to go back to normal. To fix this. To undo the last 20 minutes. Frank didn't say anything. Didn't rush me. Just watched. And somehow, that made it harder. You ever do something you already know you don't want to do? I asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. All the time. I let out a small, humorless laugh. Yeah, sounds about right. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then, I locked my phone and dropped it back into my lap. I'll text, I muttered. Frank's lips twitched slightly, like he approved but wasn't going to say it. What are you gonna say? He asked. I opened the messages, staring at the blank screen. My mind felt weirdly clear. Like the answer had been there all along. I'm not coming, I said, more to myself than to him. And then I typed it. No explanation. No excuse. Just that. I stared at the message for a second. Then hit send. And just like that, it was done. A strange weight lifted off my chest, so sudden it almost caught me off guard. Feel better? Frank asked. I exhaled slowly. Yeah. I hated how easily that came out. He nodded once, like that confirmed something for him. Good. I leaned back into the seat, my body finally relaxing in a way it hadn't all day. That was stupidly simple, I said. Most things are, he replied. We just make them complicated. I glanced at him. You always this philosophical on trains? Only when it works. I smirked slightly, shaking my head. Unbelievable. There was a pause. But now it felt lighter. Easier. Like something had shifted between us. Not just curiosity anymore. Something closer. So, I said after a second, turning toward him. Now what? I ditched my plans. You got me to stay. What's your endgame here, Frank? He looked at me, really looked this time. And instead of answering right away, he asked, Do you trust me? That caught me off guard. What? Do you trust me? He repeated, calm but direct. I let out a short laugh. I met you like half an hour ago. Yeah. And you want me to say yes? I want you to be honest. I studied him for a second. Because the crazy part, I didn't feel unsafe. Not even a little. If anything, I felt more like myself sitting here next to him than I had all day. I don't know you, I said slowly. But? He raised an eyebrow slightly. I exhaled. But I don't feel like I shouldn't. His expression softened just a little. Like that was the answer he'd been waiting for. Good enough, he said. I frowned slightly. For what? He leaned forward a bit, resting his arms on his knees, glancing toward the window as the train sped through another stretch of city. There's a stop coming up, he said. Okay. He looked back at me. We're getting off there. My stomach tightened slightly. We are? Yeah. I hesitated. Again. But this time it felt different. Not like I was losing control. More like I was choosing to let go of it. And then what? I asked. A small smile appeared on his face. Then, he said, we see what happens next. The train began to slow. And for the first time since this started, I didn't even think about saying no. The train slowed, metal grinding softly against the tracks, that familiar deceleration that usually meant decision time. Only this time, I didn't feel stuck. I felt ready. Frank stood up first. Not in a rushed way. Just smooth, like he'd already decided and his body was simply catching up. I followed. No hesitation. That alone should have worried me more than it did. You always this convincing? I asked as we moved toward the doors. He glanced back at me, a faint smile playing on his lips. I didn't convince you. Yeah? I raised an eyebrow. Then what would you call all this? He stepped closer as the train slowed even more, the distance between us shrinking without either of us really acknowledging it. I just gave you a choice, he said quietly. You made it. The doors slid open. Cool air rushed in from the platform. And just like that, we stepped off together. Underscore 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 underscore. The station was quieter than I expected. Not empty, but slower. Fewer people. Less noise. Like we'd somehow stepped out of the main flow of the city into something more paused. I looked around, taking it in. Where even are we? I asked. Frank glanced up at the sign, then back at me. Does it matter? I scoffed lightly. Not a great answer. But it's honest. I shook my head, but there was no real annoyance behind it. All right, mysterious. Lead the way then. He didn't argue. Just started walking. And I followed. Again. underscore 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 underscore. We climbed the stairs out of the station, the late afternoon light hitting us as we stepped outside. The air felt different here. Less crowded. Less rushed. Like the city had taken a breath. There was a small street just ahead lined with older buildings, a couple of cafes, nothing flashy. The kind of place you wouldn't go out of your way to visit, but also the kind you'd remember once you found it. Frank slowed slightly, glancing at me. You hungry? I blinked. Yeah, actually. He nodded toward a small cafe on the corner. Come on. Underscore 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 underscore. Inside, it was warm. Not just temperature atmosphere. Soft lighting, quiet conversations, the smell of coffee and something freshly baked. It felt grounding. We grabbed a small table by the window. For the first time since all this started, it was just us. No train noise. No constant movement. Just stillness. And suddenly, I was very aware of him. The way he sat across from me, relaxed but focused. The way his eyes didn't wander, didn't get distracted. It was like I had his full attention again. And I didn't know what to do with that. So, I said, leaning back slightly, trying to keep things normal. This your usual routine? Kidnap strangers off trains and feed them? He smirked. You walked off on your own. Debatable. Not really. I rolled my eyes. But a small smile slipped through anyway. A server came by, and we ordered something simple: coffee, sandwiches. Nothing complicated. Then it was just us again. Silence settled for a moment. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was expectant. So, I said, resting my arms on the table, you gonna tell me what this is really about? Frank tilted his head slightly. What do you think it's about? I exhaled, shaking my head. Don't do that. Do what? Answer a question with a question. He chuckled softly. All right. A pause. Then. I saw you, he said. I frowned slightly. You already said that. Not like this. His voice was quieter now. More focused. I saw the way you were standing on that platform. He continued. Like you were already somewhere else. Like whatever you were about to do, you'd already checked out of it. That hit again. Harder this time. I looked down at the table, running my thumb along the edge absent-mindedly. Maybe, I admitted. He didn't push. Didn't fill the silence. Just let me sit in it. You ever get tired of that? He asked after a second. Of what? Doing things you don't actually want to do. I let out a slow breath. Yeah. It came out quieter than I expected. More honest, too. Frank nodded slightly, like he understood that answer more than I realized. That's why I left the note, he said. I looked up at him. Just to mess with my day? To interrupt it. I held his gaze. And what if I didn't need interrupting? He didn't even hesitate. You wouldn't be here. That shut me up. Completely. Because again, he wasn't wrong. The drinks arrived. We both paused, thanking the server, giving ourselves a second to reset. But the moment didn't disappear. It just shifted. I took a sip of my coffee, then looked back at him. And now? I asked. His eyes met mine again. Steady. Intentional. No, he said. We see what you do when you're not following a plan. My chest tightened slightly. Not in a bad way. Just unfamiliar. Because for once, I didn't have an answer ready. And somehow, that felt exactly right. I didn't realize how long we stayed there. Time just stopped mattering. At some point, the coffee was gone. The plates were empty. People came and left around us, but we stayed in that same small bubble by the window like nothing outside of it really existed. And the weirdest part? I didn't feel the need to check my phone once. Not for the time. Not for messages. Not for anything. That alone should have told me something was different. So, I said eventually, breaking the quiet. This is your thing? Frank looked up slightly. My thing? Yeah. I gestured vaguely between us. You find random guys who look like they're having a crisis and, what? Redirect their entire day? He smirked. Is that what this is? I leaned back in my chair. Feels like it. Then you're giving me way too much credit. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? You were already halfway out before I showed up, he said. I just nudged you. I studied him for a second. Because again, that annoying, accurate way he talked. You're very confident about that, I muttered. I'm observant, he corrected. I shook my head slightly, but there was no real argument left in me. Still weird. Yeah, he admitted. A pause. But you stayed. There it was again. That same point he kept coming back to. And every time, it hit a little deeper. I looked out the window, watching people pass by on the street outside. Normal people. Normal plans. Normal lives continuing exactly as expected. And for the first time in a while, I didn't feel like I was missing out on that. I felt like I'd stepped out of it. So what about you? I asked, turning back to him. What about me? You just do this all the time? No plans? No schedule? He leaned back slightly, considering the question. I have plans, he said. Just not the kind that feel like obligations. I frowned. That sounds nice in theory. It's better in practice. I let out a quiet laugh. Yeah, I bet. Another pause. Then, you want to walk? He asked. Simple. Casual. Like everything else he'd suggested so far. And just like before, I didn't really think about it. Yeah, I said, standing up. Let's go. Underscore 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 underscore. Outside, the air felt cooler now. Late afternoon slipping into early evening. The kind of light that makes everything look softer, quieter. We walked side by side down the street. Not too close. Not too far. Just easy. There wasn't that pressure to constantly talk. Sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. And somehow, both felt natural. You always this quiet? Frank asked after a few minutes. I glanced at him. Depends. On what? On who I'm with. He looked at me, a hint of curiosity in his expression. And right now? I shrugged slightly. I don't feel like I have to fill the silence. That got a small smile out of him. Good. We kept walking. At some point, our shoulders brushed. Light. Accidental. But neither of us moved away right away. And I noticed it. Of course I did. My chest tightened slightly, that same unfamiliar feeling creeping back in. Not uncomfortable. Just new. You do this on purpose? I asked suddenly. Do what? I gestured vaguely. This whole reading people thing. He huffed out a quiet laugh. I'm not reading you like a book, Mitchell. Feels like it. Maybe you're just easier to read than you think. I rolled my eyes. Or maybe you're just good at making it sound like you know more than you do. He glanced at me, amused. Maybe. A pause. Then. But I do know one thing. I looked at him. What? He slowed slightly, turning just enough to face me more directly as we walked. You're not thinking about where you were supposed to be anymore. I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped. Because I wasn't. Not even a little. Okay, I admitted quietly. He nodded once. That's enough. For what? For this to be worth it. Something about the way he said that. Calm. Certain. It settled somewhere deep in my chest. We kept walking. The street got quieter the further we went. Less traffic. Fewer people. Just the soft sound of our footsteps and distant city noise fading into the background. And then, without really thinking about it, I slowed down. Frank noticed immediately. Everything okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, but my voice came out a little quieter than before. He stopped too. We were standing closer now. Closer than we had been all day. I could see the details again. The way his eyes stayed locked on mine. The slight tension in his jaw, like he was holding something back. Or maybe just waiting. For the record, I said slowly, this is not something I usually do. He didn't smile this time. I know. And you're still okay with that? He stepped just a fraction closer. Yeah. My heart picked up slightly. That doesn't bother you? No, he said quietly. Why? A small pause. Then. Because you still chose it. That did it. That same feeling again. Stronger now. The space between us felt charged. Like something was about to happen. Or already was. I swallowed slightly, my voice dropping without me meaning it to. This is crazy. Frank held my gaze. Yeah. Neither of us moved. Not away. Not forward. Just there. Right on the edge of something neither of us had fully said yet. And for the first time all day. I didn't want to step back. I don't know who moved first. I've replayed that moment more times than I can count, trying to figure it out, trying to pinpoint the exact second where everything shifted from almost to actually happening. But the truth is, it wasn't one of us. It was both. At the same time. 1 second, we were just standing there, too close, saying nothing. The next, Frank stepped in, and I didn't step back. That was all it took. His hand came up slowly, like he was giving me time to stop him if I wanted to. I didn't. His fingers brushed lightly against my jaw, not gripping, not forcing, just there, warm, steady. My breath hitched slightly. And he noticed. Of course he did. You can still walk away, he said quietly. That caught me off guard. I blinked, searching his face. Do you want me to? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Didn't look away either. No, he said finally. But it's your choice. There it was again. Choice. Always back to that. And for the first time all day, I didn't hesitate. I closed the distance. Just enough. And that was it. That was the moment everything tipped. His lips met mine, though at first, like he was still giving me room to change my mind. But I didn't. I leaned into it. And the second I did, something in him shifted. The hesitation disappeared. His hand moved from my jaw to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, not rough, not rushed, just sure. Like he knew exactly what he was doing. And I let him. More than that. I wanted him to. My hand came up instinctively, gripping lightly at his shirt, grounding myself in something real because everything else suddenly felt overwhelming in the best way. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy. It was deliberate. Every second of it. And somehow, that made it hit harder. When we finally pulled back, it wasn't sudden. It was slow. Reluctant. Like neither of us wanted to be the one to break it. I exhaled quietly, my forehead almost brushing his as I tried to steady my breathing. Okay, I muttered under my breath. Frank let out a soft huff of a laugh. Yeah, he said. I looked at him. Really looked this time. And something had changed. Not just the obvious. Something deeper. You do this with all the guys you leave notes for? I asked, half teasing, half not. A small smile tugged at his lips. You're the only one who stayed this long. That shouldn't have made my chest tighten the way it did. But it did. Good answer, I said quietly. His hand was still at the back of my neck. Not moving. Not letting go either. And I didn't ask him to. So now what? I asked. He tilted his head slightly. What do you want to do? That question again. Different context. Same effect. I hesitated. But not the same way as before. This time, it wasn't uncertainty. It was awareness. Of him. Of me. Of whatever this had turned into. I don't know, I admitted. His thumb brushed lightly against my neck. Slow. Absent-minded. But it sent a quiet shiver down my spine anyway. That's kind of the point, he said. I let out a breath, shaking my head slightly. You really don't make anything easy, do you? He smirked. I think I've made this pretty simple. I raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah? You stayed, he said. You got off the train. You didn't go back. A pause. And you kissed me. I exhaled slowly. Yeah. Saying it out loud made it feel more real. More permanent. And strangely, I didn't regret it. Not even a little. The city around us kept moving. Cars passed. People walked by. Life continued like nothing had happened. But for me, everything felt different. Quieter. Clearer. Mitchell, Frank said softer now. I looked at him. Yeah? He hesitated. Just for a second. Which was new. You don't have to go back today, he said. My chest tightened again. Not from pressure. From possibility. And if I don't? I asked. His gaze held mine. Then you don't. Simple. Like everything else he'd said. And somehow, that made it harder to ignore. I looked away briefly, exhaling through my nose, trying to process everything that had just happened in the last, hour? Maybe less. It felt like longer. Way longer. When I looked back at him, he was still there. Still watching me. Still waiting. But not pushing. Never pushing. Okay, I said finally. His expression shifted slightly. Not surprise. Just acknowledgement. Okay? He repeated. I nodded. Yeah. A small pause. Then. Let's not rush to the next thing either. That got a real smile out of him. Deal. And just like that, we started walking again. Not back to the station. Not back to anything I had planned. Just forward. Together. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what came next. I was just there. In it. With him. We didn't go far. That's the thing that stuck with me later, how none of it needed to be big or dramatic. No grand destination, no perfect plan waiting at the end of the day. Just walking. At some point, the street opened up into a quieter area. Fewer people, softer lights flickering on as evening settled in. The sky had that deep blue tint, right before it turns fully dark. I slowed down slightly, taking it in. This place is nice, I said. Frank glanced around, then back at me. Yeah, he replied. It's quieter. Feels like it. There was a bench nearby, tucked under a street lamp that hadn't fully brightened yet. Without really thinking about it, I nodded toward it. Let's sit for a minute. He didn't argue. We sat. Closer than before. Not touching right away, but close enough that I could feel the heat from him, subtle but impossible to ignore. For a while, neither of us said anything. And this time, it wasn't just comfortable. It was full. Like everything that needed to happen today had already happened. So, I said finally, leaning forward slightly, elbows on my knees. What happens tomorrow? Frank didn't answer immediately. I felt him shift beside me, Then his voice came, calm as ever. Tomorrow's not here yet. I huffed a quiet laugh. You're really committed to this whole live in the moment thing, huh? Not really, he said. I just don't like pretending I know things I don't. I turned my head toward him. And you don't know what happens after today? He met my gaze. No. A pause. But I know today was real. That landed. Harder than anything else he'd said. Because it was true. There was no pretending this was random anymore. No brushing it off as a weird coincidence, or a funny story. This mattered. I leaned back against the bench, exhaling slowly. Yeah, I said. It was. Another quiet moment passed. Then. My phone's probably blowing up, I added. Probably, he said. I didn't check it. Didn't even reach for it. Instead, I turned slightly toward him. And you? I asked. You got somewhere to be tomorrow? He shook his head lightly. Not really. I smirked. Convenient. Or intentional. I rolled my eyes, but the smile stayed. Of course it is. He shifted again, just enough that our shoulders finally touched properly this time. No hesitation. No pulling away. Just contact. And it felt right. You know, I said after a second, quieter now, if I didn't pick up that note, you wouldn't be here, he finished. I nodded slightly. Yeah. A pause. Then I glanced at him. So I guess I should thank you. He raised an eyebrow. For what? For messing up my day. He smiled. Anytime. I shook my head, letting out a soft laugh. Unbelievable. Another silence settled between us. But this one felt like closure. Not an ending. Just a point where everything lined up. I looked at him again. Hey, I said. Yeah? I hesitated for just a second. Not because I was unsure. Just because I wanted to say it right. I'm glad I stayed. His expression softened just slightly. Me too. Simple. But it meant everything. I leaned back, letting my head tilt slightly as I looked up at the darkening sky. For once, my mind wasn't racing ahead. Not thinking about tomorrow. Not thinking about what this meant, or what it should be. Just feeling it. Being in it. After a moment, I felt his hand brush against mine. Light. Careful. Like before. But this time, I didn't even hesitate. I turned my hand, letting our fingers slide together naturally. No tension. No second guessing. Just right. And sitting there, on that quiet street, with someone who had been a complete stranger just a few hours ago, I realized something. Maybe it wasn't about the note. Or the train. Or even him. Maybe it was just about finally choosing something I actually wanted. And for once, that was enough.